Some cars are built to win races, others to set records, but the Mercedes-Benz T was created for something far more ambitious: to make Germany the home of the fastest land vehicle on Earth. The story began with racing driver Hans Stuck, who dreamed of challenging the absolute land speed record and eventually convinced Mercedes-Benz and Ferdinand Porsche's engineering office to take the idea seriously. The project officially began in 1937, and the first target was 550 kilometers per hour, or about 342 miles per hour. But as British and American record cars continued to push the numbers higher, Porsche's calculations changed again and again. The target eventually reached 650 kilometers per hour, approximately 404 miles per hour, and later accounts have even described projections approaching 750 kilometers per hour, or 466 miles per hour. The important point is that these were planned speeds, not speeds the T actually achieved. The car never received the opportunity to make its record attempt. Yet before the project was finished, it had already become far more than an engineering experiment. It had attracted political attention at the highest level of Nazi Germany, turning a land speed project into something that was also intended to demonstrate German technological power to the rest of the world. As development continued, the T became increasingly extreme, and at one point, Adolf Hitler himself became involved in the project. The car officially remained the Mercedes-Benz T, but Hitler reportedly gave it the unofficial nickname Schwarzer Vogel, meaning black bird. The planned presentation was equally political. The vehicle was supposed to receive German national colors and decorations including the German eagle and the Hakenkreuz. It is important to understand that this was a planned appearance connected with the intended record attempt. The T never appeared publicly as a successful record car in that configuration because the attempt was cancelled. Hitler also insisted that the land speed record should be challenged on German soil rather than somewhere overseas. The planned run was therefore more than a sporting event. It was intended to become a highly visible demonstration of German engineering capability, with a streamlined Mercedes racing across a specially prepared section of Autobahn in front of the world. That political dimension makes the T story considerably darker and more complicated than the simple tale of an ambitious racing machine. The scale of the project was enormous, even before the engine was considered. By the time the T was nearing completion, the project had consumed around 600,000 Reichsmarks, an extraordinary amount of money for the late 1930s. The machine itself was approximately 26 feet 8 inches long, about 5 feet 9 inches wide across the main body, and approximately 10 feet 6 inches wide, including the aerodynamic wings. Its height was around 4 feet 1 inch, while its weight was approximately 6,390 pounds. Those numbers make the proportions easier to understand. This was an extremely long but relatively low and narrow machine, with its body stretched around a central mechanical package. It had 3 axles and 6 wheels, with the front axle used for steering and both rear axles providing drive. The layout was chosen because Porsche's engineers needed to distribute the enormous forces generated by the engine while maintaining stability. The T therefore looked strange even before its aerodynamic body was installed, because almost every dimension had been dictated by the requirements of extreme speed rather than by conventional automotive design. The body itself looked more like an aircraft fuselage than a conventional automobile, and there was a very good reason for that. The T needed to reduce aerodynamic drag, while simultaneously generating enough downforce to remain stable at hundreds of miles per hour. The body was developed with help from aircraft industry specialists, and scale models were tested in a wind tunnel. Its smooth nose, enclosed wheels, long tapered rear section, and narrow cockpit were all designed around airflow. 2 aerodynamic wings positioned along the sides helped press the car toward the ground. The driver sat alone in an enclosed cockpit toward the front, while the enormous engine was positioned directly behind him. The final body was therefore not simply a beautiful, streamlined shell. It was effectively an aerodynamic system wrapped around the chassis. The car's main body was only about 5 feet 9 inches wide, but with the stabilizing wings installed, its overall width reached approximately 10 feet 6 inches. This unusual difference explains why photographs of the T80 can be misleading. From certain angles, it looks surprisingly narrow, while from above, the enormous wings reveal just how much attention had been given to aerodynamic stability. The engine story is just as fascinating because the power plant changed dramatically during the project. The original concept involved the Daimler-Benz DB601, the inverted V12 engine associated with aircraft, such as the Messerschmitt Bf 109. Hans Stuck had managed to obtain access to a DB601, which was remarkable because German aircraft engines were under the control of the Luftwaffe's technical office. As the T80 evolved, however, the engineers needed far more power, so the final machine was designed around the much larger 44.5-liter supercharged DB603, itself derived from the DB601 family. In its T80 application, the engine was developed specifically for extreme output and used direct fuel injection and a special fuel mixture with additional charge cooling. Mercedes-Benz calculated that approximately 3,500 horsepower would be required for a 650 km/h target, while test running produced roughly 2,800 horsepower before the project was stopped. The engine was mounted behind the driver and sent its power to the 4 rear wheels. This is one of the clearest examples of how dramatically the T80 evolved. What began with an aircraft engine related to the Bf 109 eventually became a gigantic 44.5-liter power plant designed specifically to push a streamlined 6-wheel machine toward speeds never previously achieved by a piston-engined car. Putting that power onto the road required engineering solutions that were almost as extreme as the engine itself. All 6 wheels used specially developed Continental tires measuring approximately 32 inches in diameter and 7 inches wide, designed to cope with enormous rotational forces while keeping rolling resistance low. The rear 4 wheels were driven, and the car used a hydraulic torque converter and single-speed final drive rather than a conventional multi-speed transmission. A mechanical anti-spin system was also developed to protect the car from losing traction. Sensors compared the rotational behavior of the front and rear wheels, and if the driven wheels began spinning faster than the front wheels, the system could mechanically reduce fuel to the engine. This was an extraordinary concept for the late 1930s because the engineers were effectively developing an early form of traction control for a vehicle that had not even driven at its intended speed. The brakes were also specially engineered for the task, with large drums designed to cope with the immense heat generated during deceleration. At 400 miles per hour, the problem was no longer simply making the car accelerate. Every component had to survive the forces of rotation, friction, heat, and aerodynamic pressure simultaneously. The planned record run was supposed to take place on German soil, exactly as Hitler wanted, on a specially prepared section of the Reichsautobahn near Dessau. The straight was approximately 6.2 miles long and 82 feet wide, with the central reservation paved over to create a continuous surface. Hans Stuck was expected to drive the machine during the planned January 1940 Rekordwoche, or record week. The T80 had already reached the testing stage by October 1939, and on October 12th, it completed a run on a roller dynamometer with the engine installed. But the timing could hardly have been worse. Germany had invaded Poland in September 1939, beginning the Second World War, and suddenly the planned record attempt became impossible. Closed sections of Autobahn could no longer simply be dedicated to an enormous 400+ miles per hour experiment, and the alternative of attempting the run at Bonneville in the United States was obviously unavailable. Mercedes-Benz finally stopped development in February 1940. The engine was removed, and the T80 was placed into storage. The machine that had been intended to become a spectacular propaganda triumph therefore never even reached the starting line. That is ultimately what makes the Mercedes-Benz T80 so fascinating today. It was approximately 26 feet 8 inches long, weighed around 6,390 pounds, had 6 wheels, 4 driven rear wheels, an enclosed single-seat cockpit, and a 44.5-liter supercharged V12 engine derived from the same engine family as the power plant used in the Messerschmitt Bf 109. Its calculated target evolved from 550 kilometers per hour to 600 and finally around 650 kilometers per hour, or approximately 404 miles per hour, while some later accounts describe projections as high as 750 kilometers per hour. But none of those figures represents a verified road speed because the T80 never made its record attempt. Hitler's nickname, Schwarzer Vogel, or Blackbird, and the planned nationalist decoration reveal how closely the project had become connected with the propaganda ambitions of the period. Yet today, stripped of that political symbolism, the surviving machine is primarily a remarkable piece of engineering history, an enormous 6-wheel experiment that combined aircraft technology, aerodynamics, and automotive engineering in a way almost nothing else of the 1930s did. The T80 never became the fastest car in the world, but it remains one of the greatest unfinished what-if machines ever built. If you enjoy discovering extraordinary prototypes, forgotten record attempts, and unusual vehicles that pushed engineering far beyond its normal limits, make sure to subscribe to On Wheels, because there are many more incredible machines waiting to be discovered.